She hadn't opened her eyes in 6 months, but she still remembered everything. It wasn't the kind of sleep that refreshed, it was different. A sleep that swallowed her whole. A sleep that made her feel invisible. She lay there in the same place every day as the world moved around her. She was stuck in a prison of her own mind. Sometimes she wondered if anyone even noticed. Her apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Her phone never rang. No one knocked on the door. It was always like this, empty. She didn't mind. In fact, it felt safe, safe in the silence, safe in the shadows of her own thoughts. As a child, she had been forgotten. Her parents didn't want her. The foster homes, one after another, never felt like home. She grew up learning that she didn't matter, that she wasn't worthy of love. People passed through her life like strangers, and soon enough, she learned not to care. She built walls thick and high around her heart. The world had never wanted her, and she had stopped wanting it back. Now, as an adult, those walls were stronger than ever. She didn't need anyone. She didn't want anyone. But today, something was different. A small piece of paper lay on the kitchen counter, waiting. It wasn't much, just a crumpled note. She almost ignored it. After all, who would send her anything? But she couldn't help herself. She reached for it. And there, written in big, messy letters, were the words, "Will you be my mom?" The question hit her like a wave. It made her feel something deep inside, something she hadn't felt in a long time. It was confusion, it was shock, and it was a tiny spark of hope. But who could ask her that? She hadn't been anyone's mother. She had never even been anyone's friend. She didn't even know how to answer. But the words kept haunting her. Will you be my mom? Could it be real? Was it a mistake? The note was from a child who didn't know her, but still, somehow, had chosen her. For a moment, she forgot about the walls. She just stared at those words as if they were calling to her, asking her to do something she was too scared to even think about. What was she supposed to do now? The woman stood in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection. There was nothing special about her. No glowing smile, no spark in her eyes. Just emptiness. She didn't even bother to fix her hair or put on makeup anymore. What was the point? She had no reason to look good. There was no one to impress, no one to see her. She had convinced herself that being invisible was easier than facing the world. Work was the only thing that filled her days. But even there, she felt lost. Her co-workers were friendly enough, but it always felt like they were just being polite. They didn't really know her. No one did. She kept her distance, hiding behind a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't want to be close to anyone. Every time someone tried to reach out, she pulled away. It was easier that way, easier to be alone, because deep down, she knew, if you let people in, they'll only leave. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter, silent. The occasional text came through, but it was always from the same people. Casual messages, asking how she was, wishing her well. But they never really asked her anything important. No one truly cared. She could feel it. She was just an afterthought. No one really wanted her in their life. They were too busy with their own. She thought back to her childhood. The orphanages, the foster homes. Every time she thought she might have found a place to belong, she was let down. Her parents had never wanted her. They had left her when she was just a baby. And after that, it was a long series of strangers. People who took her in but never made her feel like she mattered. She wasn't surprised. She never had been. She'd learned long ago that people left. So she built her walls higher, stronger. She would never let herself care again. Never let anyone close enough to hurt her. But then, that note. Will you be my mom? The words haunted her. She had tried to ignore them, to throw the note away, but she couldn't. It stayed with her, sitting in the back of her mind like a dark cloud. She didn't know why she couldn't let it go. She wasn't a mother. She wasn't even close to being a good person, let alone someone who could care for a child. The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. Why would a child pick her? Why would anyone want her to be their mother? She didn't have the answers, but the question kept echoing in her head. She knew she was supposed to feel something. Maybe happiness, or maybe excitement. But all she felt was fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of messing up again. Her heart raced whenever she thought about it. The thought of being needed, of being important to someone, felt so foreign, so strange. She remembered the first time she felt abandoned. As a little girl, she had waited for her parents to come back. But they never did. And now, she was afraid that same thing would happen again. That Emily, this little girl who had somehow reached out to her, would one day leave, just like everyone else had. In that moment, she realized something. She had spent so many years building walls to protect herself. But all that had really done was keep everyone out, including the possibility of love. Maybe that's why she was still so empty. She didn't have anyone in her life because she had never allowed anyone in. And now, with this note, she was being given a chance to change everything, to be someone who mattered. But it felt so risky, so terrifying. And yet, even as fear gripped her, a small part of her whispered, "What if? What if this time it's different?" But she quickly silenced that voice. She wasn't ready for change. She wasn't ready to open her heart again. She didn't know how. She couldn't. The note still sat on her kitchen counter. She couldn't bring herself to throw it away, even though she had tried. The words, "Will you be my mom?" kept playing in her mind. Who could have sent it? She didn't know anyone with a child. She stared at it again, turning it over in her hands. The crayon marks were messy, but it was clear enough. "Will you be my mom?" It felt like a question meant for someone else. Someone better, someone kinder. Not her. For a moment, she thought it was some kind of mistake. Maybe it was for another woman, someone with kids, someone who could actually be a mom. It had to be, right? But the longer she looked at the note, the more she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in her chest. What if it was meant for her? What if this little girl was reaching out to her for a reason? She picked up the phone, hesitated, and dialed the number at the bottom of the note. It rang once, then twice. She was about to hang up when the voice on the other end answered. "Hello?" It was a woman's voice, calm but with a hint of concern. I found this letter," the woman stammered, holding the note tightly in her hand. It says, "Will you be my mom?" There was a long pause. The voice on the other end seemed to soften. "You got a letter from Emily." "Emily?" The woman frowned. "Who is she? Why would she write to me?" Well, she's an orphan," the voice continued. "She's been through a lot. She's only 6 years old, but she's very smart. She's been in foster care for a long time. She's always wanted a mom. And for some reason, she chose you." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She chose you. No one had ever chosen her. She wasn't even sure how to respond. She couldn't understand it. Why her? Why would Emily, a little girl she had never met, choose her of all people? "I don't know why she wrote to you," the woman continued. "But Emily's been asking for a mom for a long time. She's been through so many different foster homes, but no one has stayed. She just wants someone to love her, to be there for her." The woman felt a lump in her throat. She couldn't speak for a moment. What was she supposed to say? She was nobody. She was nothing special. The idea of being a mother, of taking care of someone else, felt like too much. How could she possibly be the person Emily needed? "Maybe you should come meet her," the voice suggested gently. "She's at the foster home now." "If you don't want to, I understand. But she really does want someone who'll care for her, and she's not asking for much." The woman stood in silence, the note still clutched in her hand. The idea of meeting Emily, of being face to face with a child who needed her, terrified her. She wasn't sure if she could handle it. She had spent so many years shutting people out. The thought of letting someone in, especially a child who was asking for something she wasn't sure she could give, felt impossible. But then, she thought about the way Emily had written that letter. How brave she must have been. How much hope it took to reach out to someone she didn't even know, asking for love. It was almost as if Emily believed in something the woman had long given up on, that maybe, just maybe, someone out there could care for her. The woman looked at the crayon-scribbled words again. "Will you be my mom?" Her heart softened, just for a second. The question didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt real. And that scared her. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of something else. A tiny spark of hope. With shaking hands, she put the note down and grabbed her coat. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't even know if she was ready. But she couldn't ignore the pull inside her. She had to find out. She had to meet Emily. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something different. She arrived at the foster home with a mixture of nerves and uncertainty. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She didn't know what to expect. She had been sitting in her car for 10 minutes, staring at the building in front of her. It looked like any other building, but to her, it felt like a place that held something unknown, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. The woman took a deep breath, then stepped out of the car. The cold air hit her face, and she shivered. Though it wasn't that cold, she felt like a stranger here. She hadn't been around children in years. She wasn't sure how to talk to them, how to connect with them. But somehow, she had to do this. She had to meet Emily. Inside, the foster home smelled like warmth and chaos, like a place that tried to be a home but couldn't quite pull it off. There were toys scattered on the floor, bright posters on the walls, and a few other children running around. They barely looked up when she entered. It felt like they had learned to ignore adults who were just passing through. A woman, probably the caretaker, greeted her with a kind smile. "You must be the one Emily's been talking about," she said, her voice soft but welcoming. "She's been so excited to meet you. Come on, I'll take you to her." They walked down a narrow hallway, past rooms filled with children who looked up curiously. The woman's heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready to meet Emily, to look at this little girl who had somehow chosen her. They stopped in front of a small room at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. The caretaker knocked gently. "Emily, honey? There's someone here to see you," a soft voice answered from inside. "Is it her? Is it really her?" The woman's stomach flipped. Emily had been waiting for her. She had been looking forward to this moment. She couldn't believe it. The caretaker smiled at the woman, then opened the door. Inside, there was a small girl sitting on the floor, surrounded by a few stuffed animals and a picture book. She was holding a crayon in one hand and a piece of paper in the other, but when she saw the woman standing in the doorway, she froze. Her eyes were wide, and her mouth slightly open, as if she couldn't believe it either. "Hi," the woman said, her voice shaky. She didn't know what else to say. "What do you say to a child who you're supposed to be a mother to?" Emily stood up slowly. She was so small, so fragile-looking, but there was something about her, something in the way she looked at the woman that made her feel like she was important, like she was worth something. Emily stepped forward, still holding the crayon and paper, then stopped in front of the woman. She didn't speak at first, just stared up at her with big, hopeful eyes. The woman knelt down to meet her gaze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It felt like time had stopped. The woman couldn't look away from Emily's eyes. They were filled with so much trust, so much longing. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "Are you really going to be my mom?" Her voice was soft but clear, as if she had asked this question 100 times before, just hoping someone would finally say yes. The woman's throat tightened. She swallowed hard, not sure how to answer. The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. She had no idea how to be a mom. She had never been a mom. How could she answer that? But then Emily handed her the crayon and paper she had been holding. "I made this for you," she said, her voice small but proud. The woman took the paper, a little unsure of what to do with it. On it was a drawing of a house, with a woman and a little girl standing in front of it. The woman was holding the girl's hand, and both of them had smiles on their faces. The drawing wasn't perfect. There were colors outside the lines, and the shapes weren't exactly right. But the message was clear. It was a picture of love, of hope. The woman stared at it for a long time, feeling something shift inside her. A lump formed in her throat. She had never thought anyone would draw something for her. She had never thought anyone would need her like this. But here was Emily, offering her a piece of herself, a piece of love that was as pure as it was vulnerable. "I don't know if I can be your mom," the woman finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I promise I'll try." Emily smiled, her eyes lighting up. It wasn't a big smile, but it was enough. "You don't have to try. You just have to be." The woman's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know how to be. But in that moment, she realized something. Maybe that was all she needed to do. Maybe being there, just showing up, was enough. She reached out and gently took Emily's hand. It was small and warm in hers. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. For the first time, she felt like maybe she could be something important. Maybe she could be someone who mattered. The woman left the foster home with a heavy heart. Her mind raced. She had promised Emily she would try. But what did that even mean? How could she just try to be a mother? She wasn't ready for this. She didn't know how to be anyone's mother. The thought of taking care of Emily, of being responsible for her happiness, felt overwhelming. In the days that followed, the woman couldn't stop thinking about Emily's face. That small, hopeful face, waiting for an answer. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Emily's eyes staring back at her. She felt like she was carrying a weight that wouldn't let her breathe. Was she even capable of offering the love Emily needed? Could she really step into that role, knowing how much she'd failed herself in the past? She tried to push the thoughts away. She went to work, kept herself busy, but it didn't help. Every time she looked at her phone, she saw Emily's drawing of the little house. It was still on the counter, crumpled, but somehow beautiful. The woman picked it up again, turning it over in her hands. She remembered Emily's words. "You just have to be." Could it really be that simple? Could love really just be about showing up? But fear gripped her. She had always been afraid of failure. She had failed in so many ways before. She had failed her parents, failed at relationships, failed at even taking care of herself. She couldn't imagine what it would be like to be a mother. What if she messed up? What if she couldn't protect Emily like she needed? What if she couldn't give her the love she deserved? The woman sat on her bed late one night, the apartment quiet except for the ticking of the clock. She thought back to her childhood. She had spent so many years feeling abandoned. She remembered the emptiness of never having a place to belong, always wondering why no one had ever wanted her. She thought of all the foster homes she had been through, each one colder than the last, and how she had learned to shut everyone out. She had built walls around herself, convinced that no one would ever love her. She had learned to survive, but that was all. And now, Emily needed something more than survival. She needed love. She needed someone who would be there for her, someone who would never give up. Could the woman be that someone? Could she be the one to break the cycle of loneliness that had haunted her for so long? She picked up the phone. Her fingers hovered over the number for the foster home. She had called them a few times, but each time she hung up before the call could go through. This time, her thumb pressed the dial button. The phone rang. It felt like an eternity before the voice on the other end answered. "Hello?" It was the same voice from before, the voice of the woman who had introduced her to Emily. I don't know if I can do this," the woman whispered into the phone. "I don't know if I'm the right person for her. I don't know if I can be what she needs." There was a pause, and then the woman on the other end spoke gently. "I understand. It's a big decision. But listen, Emily is a special little girl. She's been through so much, and she's been asking for someone to love her for so long. You don't have to be perfect. She just needs someone who will show up, someone who will try. That's all." The words settled into the woman's chest. She didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to have all the answers. She just needed to show up. Emily didn't need a perfect mom. She just needed someone who would care. The woman felt a warmth in her heart. Maybe she could do this after all. Maybe she didn't have to be afraid. That night, as she lay in bed, the woman thought of the little girl waiting for her. Emily wasn't asking for a perfect mom. She was asking for love, for someone to care. The woman realized for the first time that she might be able to offer that. She might not know how to be a mom, but she knew how to love. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. She closed her eyes, feeling a small spark of hope. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to try, ready to show up, ready to be someone's mother. The next morning, she made the call. The woman sat in her car, parked outside the foster home, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. She had made the decision. She was going to do this. She was going to try. But now, as she stared at the door of the building, doubt crept in again. What if she wasn't enough? What if Emily was just too much for her to handle? She had promised to try, but what if trying wasn't enough? What if she failed? Her heart beat faster, and her breath became shallow. She had spent so many years avoiding pain, avoiding disappointment, but here she was, about to step into something that could break her all over again. She didn't know if she could do this. She didn't know if she was strong enough. She wasn't sure she could open herself up to another person, especially a child who had already been through so much. The moment the door to the foster home opened, all of her doubts rushed back. The same woman from before greeted her with a soft smile. "Emily is waiting for you," she said, her voice kind but filled with the unspoken understanding that she knew this wasn't easy. The woman nodded, unable to find her words. She followed the woman down the familiar hallway, her footsteps heavy with fear and uncertainty. As they reached the room, the door opened, and there was Emily, sitting quietly by the window, holding her crayon and sketching something on a piece of paper. When Emily turned and saw her, her face lit up. Her wide, hopeful eyes met the woman's. "You came!" she said, her voice full of surprise and joy. She didn't look at her like she was a stranger. She didn't see her flaws, her fears, her doubts. Emily just saw someone who had promised to try. She saw someone who had kept her word. The woman felt her throat tighten. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. She just stood there, frozen in the doorway, staring at the little girl who had so much faith in her. For a moment, she felt unworthy of that trust. But then Emily stood up and took a step toward her, holding out the drawing she had been working on. It was a picture of two people, one tall and one small, walking hand in hand under a bright sun. The woman took the picture, her hands shaking as she looked at it. She could see what it was, a picture of a mother and a child. But it wasn't just any picture. It was a picture of hope, of a future, of something that could be real. "I made this for you," Emily said softly, "so you won't forget me." The woman's heart cracked open. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding back. She hadn't realized how much she had been hiding from herself. But looking at Emily's drawing, the simplicity of it, the love it showed, it was enough. It was enough to remind her that she wasn't alone in this. She wasn't the only one with fears, with doubts. Emily had her own struggles. But in that moment, all they had was each other. Tears filled the woman's eyes as she knelt down to Emily's level. "I'll never forget you," she whispered. "I'll never leave you." Her voice was soft, full of the promise she wasn't sure she could keep, but one she knew she had to make. Emily smiled, and for the first time the woman saw a look of real hope in her eyes. It wasn't just the hope of a child who wanted to be loved. It was the hope of someone who believed in the possibility of a family. In that smile, the woman saw what she had been missing all these years. She had spent so much time pushing people away, believing she didn't need anyone. But now, in this moment, she understood. She needed Emily, and Emily needed her. "Can we go home now?" Emily asked, her voice soft but eager. The woman stood, the weight of her past still there, but lighter now. "Yes," she whispered. "We can go home." As they left the foster home, hand in hand, something shifted inside her. She had taken the first step. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face it. She wasn't alone anymore. And that, she realized, was all she needed to move forward. Days turned into weeks, and the woman found herself adjusting to a new rhythm of life. She had no idea what being a mother really meant, but each day she learned something new. Emily had become her world, and slowly, her heart began to open in ways she never imagined. The fear she had felt before was still there, lurking in the background, but now it was easier to push it aside. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Emily, and Emily had her. At first, everything felt like a challenge. The small things, like brushing Emily's hair or making sure she had a clean outfit to wear, seemed simple for others but felt overwhelming at times. But Emily's trust and her quiet love made every task easier. When Emily smiled up at her, it was as if the weight of the world lifted for a moment. When Emily laughed, it was like music to her ears, a reminder that they were healing together. The woman noticed the small things, how Emily's eyes lit up when they went to the park, or how she would excitedly tell her stories about school. Emily had been through so much, but there was a brightness in her now that hadn't been there before. She was no longer just a child seeking love. She was beginning to feel secure, to feel safe, and every time the woman saw that change in Emily, it made her believe, just a little bit more, that maybe she was capable of being the mother Emily needed. But it wasn't all easy. There were still moments of doubt, moments when the woman would wake up in the middle of the night, her heart pounding, wondering if she was doing enough. Was she being patient enough? Was she showing Emily enough love? She was learning, yes, but there were still days when she felt like a failure. Sometimes when Emily would ask for things she didn't know how to give, the woman would feel that old fear creeping in, the fear of not being good enough. One afternoon, Emily came running into the living room, holding a small piece of paper in her hand. She was beaming, and the woman could see how proud she was. "Look what I made!" Emily exclaimed, handing the paper over. It was another drawing, a picture of the two of them, walking hand in hand, this time in front of a large house with a bright sun above them. The house was drawn bigger, as if it represented a future that they were building together. The woman took the drawing, her chest tightening as she looked at it. She realized that the picture wasn't just about what Emily wanted, it was about what they were creating. A home. A real, loving home. The woman couldn't remember the last time she felt like she belonged somewhere, but as she looked at that drawing, she knew this was it. This was her home now. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was filled with love. That night, as they sat together for dinner, Emily suddenly turned to her. "Are you happy, Mom?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with innocence. The woman blinked, caught off guard by the question. She hadn't realized how much she had grown, how much she had changed. She had been so focused on what she didn't know that she had forgotten to see what she had already built. She wasn't the same woman who walked into the foster home months ago, unsure and afraid. She was stronger now, and as she looked at Emily, she realized that the love she had been so afraid to give had become the thing that was healing them both. "I'm happy, Emily," the woman said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm very happy." Emily smiled, and for the first time, the woman felt a deep sense of peace. They had both been through so much, and yet here they were, together. She knew there would be more challenges ahead. There would be more moments of fear and doubt. But in that moment, she understood something important. Healing wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up every day, no matter how hard it got, and doing your best. And that was enough. As the woman tucked Emily into bed that night, she sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, watching the soft rise and fall of Emily's chest as she slept. The house was quiet now, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of love, full of hope, and for the first time in years, the woman believed that maybe, just maybe, she was enough. And that was the first step toward healing. Years passed, and the woman's life had changed in ways she never thought possible. The house, once quiet and lonely, was now filled with laughter, noise, and love. Emily had grown into a bright, kind-hearted young girl, and the woman, once filled with fear and doubt, had found herself. She wasn't perfect, but she was enough, and that was something she could finally believe. One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, Emily, now a teenager, looked over at the woman. She had grown so much, taller now, with the same bright eyes that had first caught the woman's heart. The change in Emily was undeniable. The girl who once looked at her with uncertainty and longing now looked at her with love and confidence. "Mom," Emily said, her voice soft but sure. "Do you remember when I first wrote that letter to you?" The woman smiled, the memory flooding back. She remembered the crumpled note, the words, "Will you be my mom?" and the fear she had felt in that moment. She remembered how unsure she had been, how she didn't know if she could handle the responsibility of loving a child. She had feared she wasn't enough. But now, she knew she had been everything Emily needed. They had both healed, together. "I do," the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "I do remember. And I'm so glad you wrote that letter, because it brought me to you." Emily smiled, a smile that was filled with gratitude and warmth. "I'm glad too." The woman reached out, pulling Emily into a hug, holding her close. This was her daughter, not by blood, but by choice. And in this moment, that was all that mattered. She had never imagined she could feel so complete, so full of love. The journey had been difficult, filled with moments of doubt and fear, but it had led her here, to this moment of peace. They pulled apart, and Emily handed her a small, carefully wrapped gift. "This is for you, Mom," she said with a grin. The woman took the gift, touched by the gesture. She slowly unwrapped it, revealing a framed photo. It was a picture of the two of them, taken years ago on a sunny afternoon at the park. They were laughing, hand in hand, the sun casting a golden glow over them. It was simple, but it was perfect. "Thank you," the woman whispered, her heart swelling with love. She had never imagined a picture like this, never thought she would be part of someone's family, let alone create a family of her own. But here she was, with Emily by her side. She realized that she had not just given Emily a home. Emily had given her a family. Emily had given her the love she never thought she deserved. "I'm so proud of you," the woman said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've grown into such an amazing person." Emily's eyes shone with love, and for the first time, the woman saw a reflection of herself in Emily's face. She saw the strength, the resilience, and the love they had built together. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, but they were enough for each other. And that was all that mattered. The woman took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that no matter what the future held, she had found what she had been searching for all along: love, home, and family. She had learned that being a mother wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, about loving with all you have, even on the tough days. As they sat there, side by side, the woman realized something. She hadn't just changed Emily's life. Emily had changed hers. And together, they had created something beautiful, something real. They had healed, not just from their past, but from everything that had ever held them back. They had found each other, and in doing so, had found themselves. And as the woman looked at Emily, her heart full, she knew one thing for sure: they were home.